How much money do I need to retire in 2024? We're going to look at some specific milestones that work across different levels of household income and household wealth. So here we've got the UK pension savings per person. So it's really not much money. The average pension pot is just over £100,000 between the ages of 55 and 64. This is data from the Pension Living Standards Association as to the amounts that couples need to retire on in order to have comfortable, moderate, and minimum standards of living. The numbers are 54,500 for comfortable, 34,000 for moderate, and just shy of 20,000 for minimum. Now, I actually think it's more like how you move through the phases of expenditure in retirement. So, for example, in terms of cars, when you first retire, you start off with two cars because that's what you had when you were both working. Then one of the cars claps out and you don't replace it, so you drop down to one car, and maybe someone has to use a taxi every now and again, and then that helps to contain your expenditure. And then finally, when you're both in your 80s, then there's no car because you can't really see that well and you don't really want to drive anymore. So next they say, okay, if these are your required expenditures and you've both got a full state pension, then they're trying to work out what size of pension pot you actually need to fund the lifestyle. So if you're looking for the minimum lifestyle, then they're saying, well, you don't actually need a pension at all. This is outside of London, but I still think it's a bit unrealistic. They're saying to fund the moderate style of living standard, you need an annuity of £121,000 if you can buy it on the basis of 6,200 of index linked income per £100,000. So it's quite an interesting statistic. That number is actually a 6.2% annuity rate, which is pretty high. And so it is maybe worth considering if you're on a low pension balance and you reckon that you do know how much money you want to spend in retirement. I think on lower pension pots, we have a trade off between risk appetite and risk tolerance. So, although some people might have a risk appetite for investing in equities and dealing with roller coaster stock market returns, they actually don't really have the risk tolerance because there simply isn't that much money to fall back on in times of hardship. So possibly people with smaller pension balances should consider an annuity if the rates are attractive. How much money do I need to retire in 2024? Research from Fidelity shows that workers in the UK who save 7 times their annual household income at the age of 68 before tax should be able to retire without any material reduction in their standard of living. And then here are the milestones as your age increases. So at age 30, you saved 1 times your annual income before tax, and that will be helped out if the bank of mum and dad have given you some starter savings. Age of 40, you need 2 times, they're saying. Age of 50, now things are really kicking up a gear and you've got to get up to 4 times your savings. So what's kind of being ignored here is how you're paying off a mortgage or student debt. So maybe the assumption is that the mortgage is paid off in your 40s and that's why the numbers are able to accelerate. And then at 60, it's 6 times, and then you should be able to hit the 7 times at age 68. And clearly, if you want to retire earlier than age 68, then you need more than 7 times your annual household income before tax. So next, how much should I save each year for retirement? This is the savings ratio. So Fidelity suggests that if you start saving at the age of 25 and continue to do so until the age of 68, you should aim to save 13% of your household income before tax. So if you have a contributory pension, then it should be 5% employee, 3% employer. So the residual 5% could come from additional voluntary contributions to your workplace pension, a contribution to a personal pension that you have, or putting money into an ISA or even a combination of those. Next question is, how much do I take from my savings each year? That's known as the safe withdrawal rate. So common research suggests a number of 4% for this. However, Fidelity are recommending 5% because you're retiring at the age of 68. So you've probably got 20, 25, maybe 30 years left to live, whereas the 4% rule was based around 95% survival over 30 years. So partly using some more recent data and using slightly less longevity, Fidelity are able to come up with 5%. Finally, what proportion of my pre-retirement income do I need to be taking from my private pensions and savings? So it's important to note that in retirement, there's no national insurance. You'll have a lower average rate of income tax, as 25% of your defined contribution pension is tax-free and there's no tax at all on ISAs. You will have less expenditure because you're not commuting to work, and you will have state pension income. And Fidelity say that to maintain a standard of living, you need 35% of your pre-retirement income before tax. So here's all the data summarized. 7 times your pre-tax income is saved. You've done that by saving at a rate of 13% between 25 and 68. You're looking to take 35% of your income when you are working from your personal pensions, and that involves taking 5% of your wealth each year. Here's the average weekly and annual wage of men and women by age range for those in full-time employment. And the final row is age 60 plus. And for men, we've got a figure of just over 36,000. For women, it's a number just over 29,000. Now let's look at a worked example based on the average salaries. So the total salary is 65,000, the 36 and the 29. They make pension contributions personally of 10%. There's then 3% added by the employer to get the 13% required savings ratio, so that disappears. They pay national insurance of £4,000. Income tax combined is 6,672. So they've got a post-tax salary of around 47,825 between them. So we take that salary, multiply it by 7. They've got required savings to hit of £455,000 on a 5% withdrawal rate. That gets a proposed withdrawal each year of the 22,750. This works out at 35% of their pre-tax salary. And then to that number, they add their full state pensions, which are just over £23,000. So the combined pre-tax retirement income is the 45,755. On that, there's no national insurance, no pension contributions. They pay a bit of income tax, 2,985. Post-tax salary in employment is then 42,769. So they've got a reduction of expenditure of just over £5,000, and according to Fidelity, that's giving them a similar living standard, which is kind of true, kind of not true. So they probably don't have a mortgage, but arguably they got rid of that a while ago. Hopefully there's no bank of mum and dad, but then maybe that was got rid of a while ago. There's certainly no commuting costs. There's no work clothes, don't need to dress up smart every day. They can just slum it a bit. They don't need to pay for weekday lunches and coffees so much. They can just make sandwiches at home. Potentially they don't need 2 cars because they're not using the cars at the same time to go off commuting. The detail behind all the tax calculations is shown here. We've got the salaries for each of them, the pension deductions, the income tax and national insurance to get the combined take-home pay here of just over 47,000 between them, when they're working. And then also we've got over here a pie chart that just breaks down how the money is disappearing in terms of tax, pensions, and then what they're able to spend. And then similarly for the numbers in retirement, here they've got gross income, but then 25% of their private pension will be tax free, so we can take that off. Then got personal allowance, salary subject to tax. There's no national insurance when they're in retirement, so they're just paying income tax. Then it comes down, tells them what their take home pay is when they're retired. So what if the couple want to retire at an age earlier than 68? Well, in those circumstances, I think they need a retirement calculator that will help them to plan their taxes efficiently, to help them make sure they're not going to run out of money, and to really plan the balance of savings between pensions and ISAs. So if you go to my website, you can learn all about that.